She walked past me at the family reunion carrying a plate of potato salad, and I felt my entire world tilt sideways. There, on the back of her neck, was the birthmark I had memorized on my own body since childhood, the distinctive wine-colored splash that my grandmother had called God's fingerprint. I was staring at a 19-year-old girl who had been dead for 19 years. A baby I had mourned every single day since I woke up in a hospital room at 17 years old and was told she never took a breath. But here she was, alive and laughing and calling my sister Mom, and when my mother noticed me staring, she grabbed my arm with fingers like talons and whispered, "She's better off, don't you dare ruin this." I didn't ruin it. I proved it. I was 16 years old when I got pregnant. His name was Marcus, a senior when I was a junior, handsome and charming and full of promises he never intended to keep. When the test came back positive, he disappeared faster than morning frost. His family moved 3 states away before I could even tell him, and I was left alone to face the consequences of one stupid, reckless night. My family's reaction was exactly what you'd expect from small-town Georgia in 2005. My father called me a disgrace. My mother cried and asked where she had gone wrong. My older sister, Colleen, perfect, married, respectable Colleen, looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "You've ruined your life," she said flatly. "You've ruined all of our lives." But I didn't want to ruin anything. I wanted to do the right thing, whatever that was. I researched adoption agencies. I looked into support services for teen mothers. I started making plans, trying to figure out how to give my baby the best possible life even though I was barely more than a child myself. My mother had other ideas. "Colleen can't have children," she told me one evening, about 6 months into my pregnancy. "She and Robert have been trying for years. It's destroying their marriage." I didn't understand why she was telling me this. Colleen's fertility struggles were well known in our family, a source of whispered sympathy and awkward silences at holidays. "I'm sorry for her," I said carefully. "But what does that have to do with, don't be stupid, Amelia?" My mother's voice was sharp. "You're 17. You have no job, no education, no husband. You can't raise a baby. But Colleen can. She has a house, a marriage, stability. She can give this child everything you can't." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You want me to give my baby to Colleen? I want you to do what's best for everyone. Including yourself." She softened her tone, reaching out to touch my arm. "Think about it. You could go to college. Have a real life. No one would ever have to know about your mistake. And your baby would grow up in a loving home with 2 parents who desperately want her." Her? I hadn't told anyone the gender yet. The ultrasound tech had slipped and mentioned it, but I'd been keeping it to myself, a precious secret. "Colleen would be a wonderful mother." My mother ignored my question. "This is the perfect solution." I pulled away from her. "I haven't decided anything yet. I might keep her. I might choose adoption through an agency. I need time to think." My mother's expression hardened. "Don't take too long. These things need to be arranged properly." I should have recognized the warning in her voice. I should have understood that arranged properly meant something far more sinister than paperwork and legal agreements. But I was 17, scared, and still believed that my family loved me. I was wrong. The labor started 3 weeks early. I woke up at 2 a.m. with contractions ripping through my body, and by the time my parents got me to the hospital, I was already dilated to 7 centimeters. Everything happened so fast, the sterile lights, the masked faces, the pain that consumed my entire existence. I remember pushing. I remember screaming. I remember the moment when the pressure finally released and I heard, nothing. No cry. No wail. Nothing. "Where is she?" I was gasping, trying to sit up, trying to see. "Why isn't she crying? Is she okay?" The doctor's face was grave. The nurses were moving around the room with quiet efficiency, doing things I couldn't see, blocking my view. "I'm so sorry," the doctor said. The cord was wrapped around her neck. She was stillborn. There was nothing we could do. I don't remember much after that. I remember screaming. I remember my mother holding me down while a nurse injected something into my fore. I remember darkness, and then waking up hours later in a different room, empty and alone and absolutely shattered. They told me she had been cremated. They told me it was better that way, no funeral, no grave, nothing to prolong the pain. They told me I was young and I would heal and someday I would have other children, living children, children who would fill the hole in my heart. They lied about all of it. I didn't heal. I survived, but I didn't heal. I went through the motions of my senior year like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping, barely existing. I went to community college because I couldn't summon the energy to apply anywhere else. I got a job as a receptionist at a doctor's office, then worked my way up to office manager over the years. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. I couldn't imagine being intimate with anyone, couldn't imagine risking another pregnancy, another loss, another moment of that consuming grief. My therapist said I had complicated grief, unresolved trauma, depression. She said I needed to find closure, to accept what had happened, to move forward. But how do you find closure when you never got to hold your child? When you never saw her face? When all you have is a certificate of stillbirth and the ashes your mother claims were scattered in the river behind your childhood home? I named her anyway. In my heart, in my journal, in my prayers, I called her Lily. After the flowers I imagined planting on a grave that didn't exist. For 19 years, I mourned a ghost. And then I saw her at a family reunion, carrying a plate of potato salad, with my birthmark on the back of her neck. The reunion was at my aunt's house in Savannah, a big, sprawling property where the whole extended family gathered every 5 years. I almost didn't go. I had been avoiding family events for years, unable to bear the sight of Colleen's perfect life, her perfect husband, her perfect daughter. Her miracle daughter. Madison had been born, according to family legend, 11 months after my stillbirth. Colleen and Robert had finally succeeded in conceiving after years of trying, a blessing, everyone said, a gift from God after so much heartbreak. I had always found the timing suspicious. Always wondered why I was never allowed to see Madison as a baby, why Colleen had moved across the country to Oregon shortly after her birth, why my mother changed the subject whenever I asked questions. But I never let myself believe what some dark part of me suspected. Until I saw the birthmark. The birthmark was distinctive, a port wine stain roughly the shape of a butterfly, located at the base of the skull where the neck meets the hairline. I had one in exactly the same place. So had my grandmother. So had my great-grandmother. It was a family trait, passed down through generations. Genetic. Unmistakable. And Madison had it. I stood frozen in the middle of my aunt's backyard, watching this girl, this woman, really, just turned 19, laugh and chat and exist in a world where I was nothing to her. A stranger. A distant aunt she barely knew. Beautiful, isn't she? My mother's voice came from behind me, and her fingers closed around my arm with bruising force. Colleen did such a wonderful job raising her. Mom. My voice was strangled. That birthmark. Is a coincidence. These things run in families. She pulled me toward the side of the house, away from the crowd. Don't do this, Amelia. Don't ruin everything because you can't let go of the past. Let go? I was shaking now, my whole body vibrating with a combination of shock and fury. You told me she was dead. You told me she was stillborn. For 19 years, I have mourned. You mourned a mistake. A teenage mistake that would have ruined your life and destroyed our family's reputation. My mother's voice was cold, matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather rather than the theft of my child. Colleen wanted a baby. You couldn't provide for one. It was the perfect solution. The perfect solution? I couldn't breathe. You stole my daughter. You let me believe she was dead. You watched me fall apart for almost 20 years, you're being dramatic. Madison has had a wonderful life. She's happy. She's healthy. She's about to start her junior year at UCLA. What could you have given her? You were 17 years old with no job and no husband. You would have ended up on welfare, and she would have grown up in poverty. That wasn't your choice to make. Someone had to make the hard decisions. My mother's face was stone. Now, I'm only going to say this once. Keep your mouth shut. Go back to the party, smile, and pretend nothing is wrong. If you try to tell Madison the truth, I will deny everything. Colleen will deny everything. We've kept this secret for 19 years, and we're not about to let you destroy it now. She released my arm and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the shadow of my aunt's house, with my world collapsing around me. I didn't say anything that day. I couldn't. I was too shocked, too devastated, too overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had been done to me. I went home to my apartment in Atlanta, called in sick to work for a week, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to process the impossible. My daughter was alive. My family had stolen her from me. For 19 years, they had watched me suffer, watched me grieve, watched me destroy myself with guilt and sorrow, and they had said nothing. By the end of that week, my grief had transformed into something else. Rage. Cold, calculated, righteous rage. And a plan. I hired a private investigator first. His name was Marcus Webb, no relation to my high school boyfriend, thankfully, and he specialized in complex family cases. I told him everything, the pregnancy, the supposed stillbirth, the birthmark, my mother's confession at the reunion. What I need, I told him, is proof. Something that will hold up in court. Something that will prove Madison is my biological daughter. Marcus nodded slowly. DNA would be the gold standard, but you can't exactly ask her to submit to a test without tipping off your family. What are my options? We could try to obtain a sample without her knowledge. Hair from a brush, a discarded coffee cup, something with her DNA on it. It's legally gray, but it would give you confirmation. Then, once you have that, you could pursue legal action that would compel an official test. Do it. It took Marcus 3 weeks to get what I needed. He followed Madison to a coffee shop near UCLA, waited until she left, and retrieved the paper cup she had discarded. The DNA was extracted and compared to a sample I provided. The results came back with 99.97% certainty. Madison was my biological daughter. The next step was legal. I found an attorney named Sandra Okonkwo who specialized in cases involving fraud, identity theft, and, crucially, violations of parental rights. When I told her my story, she listened without interruption, her face growing grimmer with every detail. "This is one of the most disturbing cases I've ever heard," she said when I finished. "Your mother and sister conspired to steal your newborn child, committed fraud by filing a false death certificate, and have maintained that fraud for nearly 2 decades. What are my options?" Criminally, the statute of limitations on most charges has expired. But there may be exceptions for ongoing fraud. Civilly, you could sue your mother, your sister, and potentially the hospital and doctor involved for damages. She paused. "But I have to ask, what's your actual goal here? What do you want?" I didn't hesitate. "I want Madison to know the truth. I want my family to face consequences. And I want..." My voice broke. "I want my daughter back." Sandra's expression softened. "Amelia, Madison is 19 years old. She's a legal adult. You can't get custody of her in the traditional sense. What you can do is pursue a court declaration that she is your biological child, expose the fraud that was committed, and let her decide what relationship she wants with you." "That's enough," I said. "That's more than enough." We filed the lawsuit 3 days later. The firestorm was immediate. My mother called me 17 times in the first hour after she was served with papers. I didn't answer. Colleen sent me a 5-page email alternating between threats and pleas, insisting that I was destroying an innocent girl's life, that Madison didn't deserve to have her world turned upside down, that I was selfish and cruel and would regret this forever. I saved the email. Evidence of consciousness of guilt, Sandra called it. The hospital where I had given birth was served next. Within 48 hours, their lawyers had contacted Sandra to discuss settlement options. They knew their exposure was massive. A doctor and nursing staff had participated in the theft of a newborn, filed false medical records, and covered up a crime for 19 years. And then came the moment I had been simultaneously dreading and craving. Madison reached out. The email arrived 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. "My name is Madison Brenner. My parents told me yesterday that there's a woman claiming to be my biological mother. They say she's lying, that she's mentally ill, that this is all a misunderstanding. But they won't look me in the eye. They won't answer my questions. And when I asked to see my birth certificate, my mother started crying and left the room. I don't know what to believe. I don't know who to trust. But I need to know the truth. Will you talk to me?" I stared at that email for an hour, tears streaming down my face, trying to find the right words. Finally, I wrote back. "Madison, I have waited 19 years to talk to you. I will tell you everything, every single detail of what happened, what I know, what I believe. And I will prove all of it. But first, I need you to understand something. I am not trying to destroy your life. I am trying to reclaim mine. You were taken from me when I was 17 years old, told I was dead, and I have mourned you every day since. I don't expect you to love me. I don't expect you to call me mom. I just need you to know the truth about where you came from. If you're willing to meet, I'll come to you. Anywhere, anytime. Just say the word." She replied within the hour. "There's a coffee shop near my apartment. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone." Madison looked exactly like me at 19. Same dark hair. Same gray eyes. Same stubborn set to her jaw. She was sitting in the back corner of the coffee shop when I arrived, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from, her face pale with stress and uncertainty. I sat down across from her, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. "You have the birthmark," she said finally. "On your neck. I saw it in pictures when I was researching you." I turned my head, showing her the port wine stain at my hairline. "My grandmother had one too. So did her mother. It runs in the family. I always wondered where mine came from." She stopped, swallowed. "Colleen and Robert don't have anything like it. Neither do any of their relatives. Because you're not related to them by blood. You're related to me." Madison's hands tightened around her mug. "Tell me what happened. Everything. From the beginning." So I did. I told her about Marcus, about the pregnancy, about my family's reaction. I told her about my mother's pressure to give the baby to Colleen, about my refusal to commit, about the early labor and the chaos at the hospital. I told her about waking up to the news that she had been stillborn, about the cremation I was never allowed to witness, about the 19 years of grief that had shaped every aspect of my life. And I told her about the reunion. The birthmark. My mother's confession. "She told me not to ruin things," I said. "She told me Madison was better off. She told me I was being dramatic, that I should keep my mouth shut and pretend nothing had happened. Madison was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. But she's my grandmother. Colleen is my mother. They've loved me my whole life. They've loved you, I agreed. I don't doubt that. But their love was built on a crime, Madison. They stole you from me. They let me suffer for almost 2 decades. They lied to you about who you are and where you came from. Why? Her voice was anguished. Why would they do something like that? Because Colleen wanted a baby and couldn't have one. Because my mother was ashamed of her teenage daughter's pregnancy. Because it was easier to take what they wanted than to consider what it would cost me. I reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. I don't expect you to choose sides. I don't expect you to hate them or love me. I just needed you to know the truth. Whatever you do with that truth is up to you. Madison stared at the table for a long time. I want the DNA test, she said finally. A real one, legal, official. I need to know for sure. Already arranged. Sandra Okonkwo, my lawyer, can have it done tomorrow if you're willing. Tomorrow? Madison nodded slowly. Okay. Tomorrow. The DNA test confirmed what we both already knew. Madison was my biological daughter. The results were indisputable, irrefutable, documented by one of the most respected genetic testing laboratories in the country. Armed with this proof, Sandra accelerated the legal proceedings. The hospital settled first, $2.7 million, plus a commitment to review their protocols and terminate the staff members who had been involved in the original fraud. Most of those people had retired or moved on, but the institution's liability was clear. My mother and sister were next. They tried to fight it, of course. They hired expensive lawyers who filed motion after motion, trying to delay, to dismiss, to bury the truth under mountains of legal procedure. But Sandra was relentless, and the evidence was overwhelming. The custody hearing, really more of a formal legal recognition of parentage, took 3 hours. 3 hours to undo 19 years of lies. The judge reviewed the DNA evidence, the medical records Sandra had subpoenaed, the testimony of experts who confirmed that the stillbirth documentation was fraudulent. He listened to my statement about what had happened, about the trauma I had endured, about the years stolen from me. And then he ruled. Madison Brenner was legally declared to be Madison Amelia Thornton, my daughter, born 19 years ago at a hospital in Savannah, Georgia, and illegally taken from me through fraud and deception. The birth certificate was corrected. The record was set straight. And for the first time in 19 years, I was officially a mother. My mother and sister were charged with fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying legal documents. The criminal case took another year to work through the system. They both pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for reduced sentences. My mother received 3 years probation and mandatory counseling, while Colleen received 5 years probation and was required to pay restitution. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. It was public acknowledgement of what they had done. It was their names in court records, their faces in news articles, their reputations destroyed by their own actions. My mother tried to contact me once, after the sentencing. She sent a letter through her lawyer, a pathetic, self-serving document full of excuses and justifications. She had done it for my own good. She had done it for the family. She had done it because she loved me and knew what was best. I burned the letter without reading past the first paragraph. Some bridges are meant to stay destroyed. Madison and I are still learning how to be family. It's not easy. She's an adult with her own life, her own identity, her own complicated feelings about everything that happened. She spent 19 years believing Colleen was her mother, loving her, trusting her, and discovering the truth has been devastating for her in ways I can only imagine. She's in therapy now. So am I. Sometimes we go to sessions together, working through the trauma with a professional who specializes in cases like ours, cases where families are torn apart and rebuilt from the wreckage of lies. Madison calls me Amelia, not Mom. I don't push her to change that. I'm grateful just to know her, to hear her voice, to see her face across a table. And know that she's real, she's alive, she's the daughter I mourned for 19 years. Last month, she came to visit me in Atlanta. We went to the river behind my childhood home, the place where my mother claimed to have scattered the ashes of my stillborn baby. Madison held my hand as I stood on the bank, finally understanding the full horror of what had been done. She never scattered ashes here, Madison said quietly. There were never any ashes. Because I was never dead. I know. My voice was thick with tears. But I came here every year on your birthday. I threw flowers in the water and cried and talked to you like you could hear me. I can hear you now. I turned to look at her, my daughter, my miracle, my Lily who had been stolen and returned after almost 2 decades. I have so much time to make up for, I said. So many birthdays. So many conversations we should have had. We have time now. Madison squeezed my hand. We have the rest of our lives. People ask me sometimes if I have regrets. Do I regret pursuing the truth, even though it destroyed my family? Do I regret putting Madison through the trauma of discovering her entire life was a lie? Do I regret the pain, the legal battles, the years of grief that can never be returned? The answer is no. I regret that any of it was necessary. I regret that my mother and sister were capable of such cruelty. I regret that I spent 19 years mourning a child who was alive and growing and becoming a person I never got to know. But I don't regret fighting for the truth. I don't regret refusing to let it go like my mother wanted. I don't regret proving what was done to me and making sure there were consequences. Because the truth matters. It matters more than convenience, more than family reputation, more than the comfort of people who profit from lies. My daughter was stolen from me on the day she was born. She was given to another woman and raised as someone else's child. I was told she was dead, and I believed it, and I let that grief shape my entire existence. But she wasn't dead. She was alive. And now she knows who she is. That knowledge was worth every battle, every tear, every moment of pain. My name is Amelia Thornton. I am a mother. And no one will ever take that from me again.